Well, there it is. Kyle Tucker is a Chicago Cub. Things are crazy in the trade market right now. When this was first reported on that Kyle Tucker was going to get traded from the Houston Astros, I kind of did not believe it, right? I mean, a player of his caliber moving from an Astros team that is still definitely a contender. But when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. And I think a lot of it you can somewhat point back to Juan Soto as assurance of what would happen next year. Kyle Tucker is going to be a free agent, and he's going to want a big payday. There's realistically no chance that big stars like him are going to sign an extension mid-year, especially not for a hometown discount after we saw the price get drummed up for Juan Soto all the way up to $765 million, with the potential of increasing past $800 million. I mean, Tucker would be a UFA. He's likely going to command at least $400 million, maybe like even $450. He's not as young as Soto, but he's pretty close to being as good as Juan Soto. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Here's the package. Kyle Tucker is going to Wrigley Field in exchange for pitcher Hayden Wesneski, third base prospect Cam Smith, and third baseman Isaac Paredes. Now, that's a solid haul. I'm a big fan of Cam Smith, who was drafted by the Cubs in this most recent MLB draft. He was pick number 14. He's ranked right now as the 73rd prospect in all of baseball and the 7th within the Cubs organization. But for all intents and purposes, he could be a little bit blocked. They've got good infielders there. What I think is most interesting about this is we just saw the Yankees trade for a star, also right fielder, and they got him for 1 year. They gave up Michael King, namely, but a guy with Cy Young caliber, and they lost him. I guess technically they get a compensatory pick as they reached out a qualifying offer. But, this could be a one and done for the Cubs with Kyle Tucker, unless they're willing to open the pocketbook, which, like we said, is going to be an exorbitant price. And we haven't really seen the Cubs be willing to do that. Yes, they went out and got Shota Imanaga. They paid Dansby Swanson a handsome contract. But this is going to go above and beyond those kind of deals. Now, Kyle Tucker as a player is phenomenal. He's been playing in Houston for a while, and I don't know how he's maintained to be so under the radar. I don't think he's a big mouth. He doesn't talk a lot to the media, but he's a star. We talk about Juan Soto. This is another left-handed right fielder that is a better defender. He's a better base runner. He's more athletic than Juan Soto, even being a couple years older than him. And his bat is close to as good. I can't say that he's better than Juan Soto. I think purely with the stick, I would rather have Soto. But it's not night and day here. I mean, it might be just a little bit under Juan Soto. The Cubs are getting a fantastic player. It's just really how many games is he going to be in a Cubs uniform? He's had a little injury history. Is it going to be 130, 140 games, and then he's elsewhere next year? He's playing in New York? Who knows? It's going to be very interesting. Talking about what the Astros are going to get back, Cam Smith, who, like we mentioned, was a high pick in this most recent draft. He was number 14. I like him a lot. He's got real power. I think he, not quite five-tool talent. He doesn't really have the speed tool, but he's got a great arm at third base, which Astros, they're losing a third baseman likely in Alex Bregman because their offer is a bit shy of what he's likely going to want. It seems like that connection isn't going to be back next year. And Cam Smith, I don't think, is going to be ready, but that's partially why they got Isaac Paredes, which we'll talk about. But overall, Cam Smith, big fan of him. Obviously, the big third base prospect for the Cubs right now is Matt Shaw. He has been killing it. He was so good in the Premier 12 tournament that just went on a couple of weeks ago. And I think he's the guy looking forward for the Cubs. Yeah, I like Cam Smith for sure. You also get Hayden Wesneski there, which he's a solid arm. He's been mixing around as a reliever and a starter. Overall, I think he's a solid piece. The Astros have definitely been able to unlock more within some of these pitchers. He's got an interesting profile with his repertoire, and I think he's got tools there. The Astros lost a lot of relief pitchers. They're potentially losing starters. Urquidy's a free agent. Framber Valdez at the end of next year. But also Isaac Paredes is coming in that package as well, who we know Isaac is one of the most prolific pullers of the baseball within the game. I mean, his swing is made for Minute Maid Park, or the stadium formerly known as Minute Maid Park. Pretty much all his home runs are right to left field. He tormented Tropicana Field with that shorter fence that they have out there in left. He's going to really hunt for those Crawford boxes, and I think he's going to play very well, better than he did with the Cubs, and maybe better than he did as a Ray, where he was truly one of the best bats in baseball. So you get a third baseman that's going to be there right now for Houston, and then the future in Cam Smith for potentially 1 year of Kyle Tucker when you probably weren't going to pay him anyway. And that does somewhat frustrate me because the Astros, I mean, they played Houston, right? That's a pretty big market. They've got all the tools at their disposal to give money to a guy like Kyle Tucker, but we know that's not their MO. They let Springer walk. They let Correa walk. And what happened? They still won another World Series, and they've still been competitive. They've made the playoffs every year since 2017. I don't know. It always hurts Houston fans. You guys really go so hard for your team, you know, especially since about 2015 when they got good. They've been just pouring their hearts out, and to see an owner not be willing to even try and pay a guy does hurt. But ultimately, I think you got to trust that front office because they've given you so much success. And yeah, it's going to be expensive. That's all I'm going to say. Cub fans, I would be I would be over the moon that you guys are getting a talent such as Kyle Tucker, but I would be cautious that he will not be there for too long because he's going to command a huge contract, and I just don't know if Jed Hoyer, you know, their GM, if he's willing to go that high, if Cubs ownership is willing to go that high. But I think all the talent is there. He's not going to make Soto money because he's not as young as Juan Soto. And the Mets probably won't be in on Kyle Tucker. Have to remember that. Big reason why the Mets ended up paying Soto so much is because they were being played with by these other teams. You know, you had the Blue Jays, you had the Red Sox and the Yankees, essentially as bargaining chips. I think Soto wanted to be a Met all along, but those other teams acted as decoys, and Scott Boras and Juan Soto used them to their advantage and drummed the price up to a number I don't know when we're going to see surpassed. Realistically, who could make more money than that in the foreseeable future, in the next decade? And God, it's hard to imagine, but there we go. Kyle Tucker is a Chicago Cub, a good package for Houston. I like it both sides, but is this a rental? Is this giving up a very talented young player in Cam Smith for essentially nothing? We'll have to see. But overall, I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Let me know in the comments section. Baseball is crazy.